Hi, welcome to Modern Day Mystic with your host, moi, Janine. Today I'm going to be talking about some of the common things I see when I do readings, or share some of my viewpoints about the afterlife. And really, I'm just sharing. One of the things I want to preface this channel with completely is I'm just sharing one experience in this big, vast world. I do not claim to know what goes on. I do not even claim to say that I am an expert in anything. And I, again, am just sharing my life, my experiences, with the knowing that you do not have to believe or not believe it, that you are in your own agency, that you are going to have your, compare this to your own experiences or what you believe, that you are in fullness in your own spiritual journey. I'm in fullness in mine as best as we possibly can, and we're sojourning, and part of sojourning is sharing. So I've been a medium for 25 years. I've done a lot of readings. And there is a few things that I really do love to share because I think they're really cool and neat. One is, especially makes a big difference right now in our everyday, where there's a lot of yucky stuff going on, in horrifying and terrible ways. And so one thing that I do notice very much when I enter into the space of doing a reading. Now, I want to make sure that you understand, I don't go into some sort of trance type of thing. I just kind of like switch my focus. I'm very much me. I can, do all the things that I do but I just kind of, it's like almost like just focusing on a different, thing versus one. And once I do that, when I'm in that space of doing a reading, one thing that comes through all the time is this like resounding, everything's okay. And quite literally, if I go for long periods of time without switching my focus into that realm, I can get really depressed. It's very heavy to me in this one, I'm just going to call it vibration. I don't know what else to call it. Some people call it realms. I don't even know. But if I don't kind of switch that focus into that spiritual space, into this other, space, I actually can get very, very depressed. And the moment I switch my focus, there is this resounding, like, overwhelming, peace, if you will, that says it's all okay. Now, what I find really interesting about that is when I talk to other people who have had near-death experiences, they describe that same feeling, that same understanding, and again, it goes beyond our words. Now, I personally have not had a near-death experience, but I think it's interesting when I hear what they're describing and it matches what I see or what I feel or what I've, so that's like this first piece of, it just enters into, despite all of the nuts and horrors, that somehow there's this other space, and I don't even want to say make sense of it, but it's this resounding peace and okayness. Now, I'm going to stop us all here. That does not mean that I don't have a voice, or I bypass, or I don't see the horrors that are happening here. I feel that there's been a spiritual abuse a lot with like this everything's okay, so don't do anything attitude. And my experience with seeing that everything is okay actually results in a complete opposite way I am in the world. If you do know me, I'm a pretty big human rights advocate. And the reason is that my experience of this space of everything okay and peaceful is like, we can have that right now. It can happen right now if we treat each other this way, like if this is what our knowing is. So I just want to make sure for my own self as I'm sharing that as I share this, in no way am I sharing this to make it so you do nothing or that you don't, everything's okay. So I don't have to, stand up for my neighbor or stand up for myself or, you know, um, you know, just be spiritual and don't feed the bad energy. Like all that stuff. I don't, that's not at all why I'm saying this. I'm actually saying this for the advocate like myself, who sometimes can get trapped too much into that nothing is okay, to know that it is, and to know that what you're fighting for, or what you feel, or what you're advocating for, that love you're advocating for, isn't a farce. It's actually a real space that you know deep down inside. And I think that's a really important, piece, especially right now, and especially if you happen to be attracted to my show or whatever this is. So that's number one. Another huge, I guess, aspect that I see over and over again is when it comes to somebody passing away in a traumatic way, whether it be an accident, whether it be a suicide, whether it be a heart attack, an illness, an impact, war, like all of these different pieces. There's something I always see, and this is exactly how I see it. I'm going to say it's a hand, but it isn't really a hand. It's just the only way I can put it. But it's like a hand comes in, takes that soul, picks them out of that body prior to any of the horror. It's like it's like something happens where it's like, whoop, you're out. That's just the body, not you, just the body. And I see it over and over, and I have for years. It wasn't until last year when I had just, I had COVID, so I was in quarantine. And I was watching all these near-death experiences because, like, that's, I was just in quarantine watching something. And what was fascinating to me was these people who had near-death experiences explaining exactly how I have seen it for the last 25 years. And I've never watched too many of their accounts before. I don't know why. You'd think I would, but I hadn't. But they were explaining in like their first experience something that I see all the time. And to me, that just gave me a little more validation. Because again, it's a lot of responsibility when you do this work, at least for me, I don't want to lie, if that makes sense. I don't want to I just want to be really honest. And so that's how I always approach things. But this gave me some sort of validation to something that I've been watching for 20 something years. And so I do think it's important, to share, because one of the things that I also see, right? So there's the mediumship. If you haven't seen like my previous video, go watch that. But there's a mediumship, which is loved ones who've crossed over. And then there's the intuitive piece of me. And one of the things I see in the intuitive healer piece of myself is somebody who, when we lose somebody, it's not just grief. There could be PTSD. There's a trauma in losing someone, especially to something that is violent or, an accident and sudden. And there is a lot, or even someone who's super, super sick. There's a psychological component to us where you literally see like the replay in your head of the yuck, the horror, and it goes over and over. And it's really important to know, one, that if that's happening with you, go, please. There's nothing wrong with getting help from a psychologist or a psychiatrist or somebody in a grief work. But also to make sure that you understand that there is a trauma that happens when we lose somebody, and we need to have help for that. We shouldn't be, it's not just grief. There's the grief journey, but there is also PTSD, post-traumatic stress syndrome part to this. And so I find this piece of information, and it is something that I do get from the mediumship world, to especially somebody who I can tell is having these loops this trauma loop is that what you're seeing is it no longer exists. The person's soul wasn't there. They're in a good place. And that, let's heal together to allow freedom from being trapped into the energy of whatever that trauma piece is. There's so much to say about this, and it's so layered. So I'm just, something that, like I said, once I also was validated from it, just to know that my perspective, what my experience is that they are not in that space. They're not sick anymore. They don't have a body to be sick anymore. They are not hurting anymore. They don't have that body that, to be hurt anymore. They are not suffering from mental illness anymore. They don't have a brain to suffer from the mental illness. And that really going right into the next message that I hear all the time is, can you just remember me at my best? It's not saying don't remember the other stuff, but in particular, somebody who passes when they're really, they've lived a very, very long life, or somebody who has been sick for a really long time, all the time, like they come through and just be like, can you take some pictures out of when I'm hot and sexy and like I'm like the life of a party, because like that's really who I am. I'm really not that person who was sick for X amount of years and who was a little grumpy and who kind of like was trudging through life. Or yes, remember me as like a wise old lady or a wise man who is older in my years, but there was a point of time where this body was sexy, or it was beautiful. Or, that's the one thing that also comes out, and I think it's really interesting how many people tell me that when they were in the body, how pretty they were or how handsome they were. And it's not ever said in a arrogant way. I really think, especially because so many of us, like just put ourselves down constantly for whatever way we look, for whatever, whether, we're picking on ourselves. If you have straight hair, you want curly hair. If you have curly hair, you want straight hair. If you have, if you have brown eyes, you want blue eyes. If you have blue eyes, you want hazel eyes, and you want brown eyes, and like all of the stuff that we pick each other on. What's so interesting is I feel like, when you're in a different space and you're looking back or you're looking, in peering in, you recognize, wow, what beauty you are. And so not only for us here on earth to remember our loved ones, for them in their best, it's also a message for each of us. Like, you are beautiful. You are handsome. You are like amazing, and you will see that. Why not now? Why not do that for yourself now? Because you will. And I think that for me is like the one aspect I always want to share with people. And I don't, like in a reading, I only have so much time. And like, these are the things I really want to be like, can you just see how freaking cool you are? Like, don't wait. And it's not an arrogance. It's not this like, yes, I'm beautiful. It's, oh my God, I'm me. Oh my gosh, I actually like me. I like me. Look. Oh, I like me, and I desire you or anyone else, if you're going to remember me, remember like how cool I am, you can also, there's always intricacies, but especially if you're just looking at your loved one as like old or sick or at their like toughest, like honor that, love them, but by golly, take out a goddamn picture when they're all like little sexy or like handsome. Like, I got cool pictures of my grandparents, and they're my grandparents, but they're like posing in their swimsuits, and damn, they were some good looking folks. I don't know them like that. I don't know those people, but that's who they also were. And I think that, just as I would want my great grandchildren or my grandchildren to know not just me as grandma, but like my life, like what I was, so do yours, so do your loved ones. So that's a big resounding message too. Another big one is abortion, um, miscarriages. Stillborn is a little different, but both in this realm, especially because of the controversy out there. So again, this is my perspective. All right. I do read our little ones who come through. I have 3 little ones in spirit. I know that path really well. I know the devastation. And they always come through with thankfulness. There's always this resounding love. And there is always just a different kind of bond and feeling and knowing that it wasn't the right time. And that is including abortion. Just so I'm going to side note on this a little bit. And I know I'm heading into murky territory. But I think it's important because this is just, again, my experience. And I'm just sharing it. I have never been in front or known a woman to make any sort of decision on life, on whether to have life or just have life, that wasn't in utter most loving care possible. And I actually have never met a little one who, or anyone actually, therefore, who has been crossed over, who has said something like, I shouldn't have, or I should have, or like, there's no shouldas or shouldn'ts. There seems to be a perfection in it. And it's more about honor and honoring soul, honoring compassion, honoring something that was so much freaking greater than us. And really in a real way, especially because it's in a lot of the specifically biblical, not because it's not biblical, that's what I was trying to say, specifically fundamental religiosity, it's important to know that biblically there's nothing ever said about it, about an abortion. There literally is, it's a very new concept to not have a greater understanding of the way in general creation works. And that's like, and survival and things. So it's going a little far, but I just want you to know that one of the things that does come through, and a lot of times people don't, like, they almost don't think that like, because we kind of minimize so much of that soul, if you will, being in that little bit, a lot of times, sometimes it surprises people that they're allowed to, one, feel connected, especially if it was a choice. But it surprises people when it does come through, that their little ones are like, I love you! And so I just want to say that, for me, and even if, your little one didn't come through in a reading, or just know that when I do, and I see them all the time, it's always this, like, it's a real neat, it's a different type of bond and relationship and love. And you're allowed to love them. You're allowed to think of them. You're allowed to have them be yours. So that's another, common message that comes through. Another one that I do also see or hear a lot is that I only am able to see up to a certain point. So there's, like, sometimes I get a few people who are on the other side who like, kind of know my curiosity, like, what's it like over there, or what is this all about, coming, and there is this resoundingness that, at least for my personal ability or whatever, but I think it's more of like an ability to understand that, in a way, I can only see a certain aspect, but there's so much more. And it's almost like, if I can even like kind of describe it, it's almost like I could see even farther, but I can't. I'm not like, and it's because if it what it feels like is like that I just wouldn't have the ability to understand it. Like in a way, my, whether it be the body, whether it be my mind, whatever it is, it's a beyond my comprehension space, and so therefore there's more, but I don't know what that is. And there's like beauty, colors that I can't describe here. It's interesting, musically, especially if you're musically inclined. I know that there is like scales and notes and sounds that are beyond what I could hear or even reproduce here. Isn't that interesting? Um, a lot of times, like, I don't, like I said, I don't do the ghost thing. Like, nobody appears to me as a figure of a person because they're not, right? They do not live in a body. And they're not just this one thing in this body that they were, this is a, if you will, this body is almost is like a limit, or a container, right? A container for experiences. So you're more than this container. So I will see what I would say like is a projection, like, hey, I had this kind of hair. This is what my relationship to the person is. But what will happen if I were to say like, well, what do you see? It's like colors and movement, and there's like, I want to say it, there's like almost like an essence. It's a smell, but I can't smell it. It's a feel, but I can't feel it. But why do I find that this is so, why do I like, this is something I always want to share. And it's because it one peers into the space of, sometimes we just have to take a breath. And when it comes to faith and trust and love and this, just know that you're probably right and wrong all in one. So kind of like, right? The other piece for me, in this most amazing and awe-inspiring and loving way, there's more. There's more. It's so neat to me. And to me, that's an invigorating thing, and that's why I want to share it. I hope it is for you too. But there's just so much. Again, like, essence, it's a love, but it's just bigger than love. And there's like this like okayness and authenticness. There's no hiding, there's no nothing. You are who you are, and that's good, and it's okay. And communication isn't hard. It isn't lost in translation. It gets, there's like, it's like really that connectedness where truth, there's only truth. And I mean, that's honestly why, if you look at my website, it's always a quest for truth, because for me, more so than anything, that all things in truth are free. So that's just a few. I'm going to do more of these videos, but I don't want to do like hour-long videos because it's just too long, and we're at 24 minutes. I keep forgetting to say this, but this is only my third video. So like, subscribe. It will help. And also lets me know that you like this kind of thing. Although I think I'm going to do it no matter what, because I'm kind of having fun. You are loved. You are never alone. And you're able to be exactly where you are without me or anyone else telling you you should be anywhere else. I love you.